Thank you everybody for joining me in my celebration of my story and my journey through my master's program. Specifically, this last semester has been spent working on my design thinking project. With this process, the first part was to identify a problem that I had in my classroom and then design a challenge. What did I want to fix about it? So my question that I was looking at was, how might I redesign my math class so that I can address the needs of all my students? The reason I came up with this question is I felt like I didn't have enough of that contact time to really know what my students needed to be successful. Sure, I could get a general idea, but I just didn't feel like I had the best idea. I also worked on making homework more differentiated last year, but I just couldn't find a way to make that stick for the whole year. So I didn't feel that the homework was always beneficial to a lot of my students. And then finally, I just couldn't deliver those differentiated lessons that worked consistently, so I wanted to find a way to do that. So the next part of this process was to get some qualitative data about my problem, and so I did some interviews with some different teachers, including Brian Silk over at Aiken Road to talk about flipped learning, and I did some surveys with parents and students. And so some patterns emerged around homework and communication, the understanding of concepts and feedback. And based on those patterns, I came up with some insights that helped direct my research, which will be the next step. So I knew that homework needed to have clear objectives, it had to be meaningful, and that it needed to be of quality, not quantity. I also know that there was some discontent on the amount of time spent on homework, so I knew that was something that I'm going to be looking at also. As far as communication, having clear communication with parents and students about expectations, not only in the classroom, but about the homework, and about where resources could be found to help their students. As far as understanding concepts, I wanted to found that small groups, teachers said small groups, and being able to have that contact time really helped for better understanding, and it allowed for giving feedback better in a timely manner. So if I can meet with the students, I can give them feedback so they aren't always keep making the same mistakes. As far as activities, I found out that there needs to be a focus on understanding of the underlying concepts. Not just can they figure out the problem, but do they know why they're doing what they're doing. Finally, the activities need to be different. They need to accommodate all the different needs and all the different interests of the children and my students. So I take these data results and then I use that to form my ideas for research. So as I conducted my academic research, I found that there were some themes that were uncovered under 6 different specific concepts that I was looking at. I discussed those in my synthesis matrix video more in depth, and you can have a look at that. There's the web address so you can go and see that. But the basic themes that I found were that differentiated learning increases student achievement, small group instruction helps doing that, and discussions and activities showed the creativity and flexibility in math. Purposeful and engaging homework and instruction are necessary to engage students in their learning. Assessment, mostly formative assessment, is something that came about. And then clear and appropriate communication with parents is an excellent way to increase student motivation and their success levels in school. And also more training needs to be provided to educators, specifically on creating formative assessments and using differentiated instruction. So when I look at differentiated learning and I look at the use of small groups, the research suggests that differentiated learning really helps students become more engaged and inspires a love of learning. The reason that it does this is it really increases those critical thinking skills, and it helps push students because you're using their zone of proximal development so that you can differentiate lessons to meet their specific needs. By working in the small groups, then I can take that information and I can give them the instruction that they need. It also involves having peer evaluations. It's a lot of hands-on, project-based learning, and it doesn't have to be all the time, but a majority of the time. So what I'd be looking at is using small groups and using formative assessment to help determine those groups. Once I have those groups, then I can differentiate the learning. It's not just the instruction that can be differentiated, but it's the products that maybe the students present their information to show what they know, or it can also be the content, what they're learning, that can be different. So along with that, I can do different things to meet all the different needs of the students in my classroom. Next, the concept of meaningful work both in the classroom and at home came up, and the research really suggests that the homework needs to be something where students can practice skills that they haven't mastered yet, but they are becoming competent on, so that they aren't going home and being frustrated. They also suggest that there is a need to incorporate parents into the homework design also, because it sets a general rule for the students that the parents are involved, the teacher is involved, so they begin to see that it's important. It teaches study skills, it teaches life skills, getting their work done, practicing, communicating with their parents, and that transfers back into the classroom. If you're doing meaningful work, they are able to have discussions. It's real life projects that they're interested in, that engage them. They're things that they can discuss with their peers and see that their peers may have different ideas too. So it's also teaching, looking at different perspectives for the students. So being able to have those activities in the classroom where students maybe solve a problem a different way shows the students that math is flexible, it's creative, and people can come about solutions in different ways. Sometimes being able to see those different ways may actually help the student learn it in a better way because they're developing that understanding for themselves. They're not being told directly how to do that. And the research says these kinds of activities should actually happen before direct instruction because it engages the students and makes them curious, and then they want to find out more about the content that you are going to be delivering. So when I was researching, the concept of assessment was next that came up, and specifically formative assessment. The research really showed the benefits of using formative assessment, but it also pointed out that there's a little problem with that because we know that formative assessment is the best way to assess our students' level of knowledge and understanding. However, our testing does not quite reflect those types of assessments. So what the research suggests is that assessment and your instruction are always intertwined. It's a circle. You're using assessments to see what your students are understanding and going back and changing your instruction per need and making that fit each student. So you're checking for understanding, then you're guiding them through practice, and that's when you have to look at things and adjust if you need to, and then use that to guide your future instruction. And it can come in many different forms. It can be questioning, it can be feedback, it can be self-reflection, it can be projects that they're working on. Just by going around the classroom and asking them questions, you can get a good understanding of where your student is. Keeping a portfolio, anything like that, to help guide your instruction and the steps that you need to take in the future. When discussing communication, the research really pointed for the need to make sure that the teachers are communicating with parents in the best way for each of those families. And I see this. I understand the need for that. I know it's a little overwhelming and can be time consuming, but that's the way that you're going to get parents the most involved in their child's education, and that's important for the child to be successful. So especially when communicating about homework, it's important to be clear and concise and give direct instructions so that the students and the parents understand the expectations on homework, and then you can make sure that you're getting the parents then to be involved in it. If they don't understand it, you're going to get pushback. It's going to be a lot less likely that they are going to be involved in their child's homework experience at home. And we want that because research shows that if the parents are involved in the child's schooling, specifically in homework, then the student's level of success increases also. The final theme that emerged in my research was a paradigm shift, not only in instruction, so changing more from direct instruction into differentiated instruction, but also in using formative assessment. It seems that out there aren't very many role models for teachers to go and watch somebody using these different techniques successfully because they are newer. So I know new teachers coming in are getting a lot of training on this, but those of us who haven't been to school in a while may not have had as heavy of an emphasis on these two things. So the research suggests that professional development, there needs to be actual training for teachers. Then maybe it's going to be important that we go out and set those examples so teachers do have role models to go and watch in the classroom. So these are the design principles then that I created after researching and talking to other people. So here they go. Parental communication about homework, class structure, and tools to help students at home. Engaging activities that include critical thinking, exploration, discussion, choice, and real-life situations. Purposeful homework assignments that involve parents. Small, flexible grouping of students for more individualized instruction. Differentiation of content, process, or product to help students be successful. Formative assessments, both teacher and peer evaluations, and then time to reflect on feedback and make corrections, and daily and weekly review of past concepts. What I do now is I take these design principles and I have to use them to form a solution for my problem. So many of you got to see my prototype 1 video, and some of you actually saw my second one too that I tweaked after that. So here's the solution that I've come up with. So first, daily and weekly review of prior concepts. That's during the morning work time. So that's when there'll be 1 or 2 questions that are going to be more real world type questions that the students will have time to work through to review prior concepts. Next, intro to power standards with critical thinking, explorative activity or question. So when we're beginning and entering those units with the big power standards, I want to have a 15-20 minute critical thinking activity that gets them excited about what we're about to learn, that gets them engaged. So that will come at the beginning of those units. Next, I'm going to have limited large group direct instruction time. So the max will be 20 minutes because I want to leave time for small flexible group rotations with stations. So there will be 2 stations, Monday through Thursday, that focus on the current contact. When the other groups aren't with me, they will be working on stations with that content. Otherwise, I'll be meeting with 2 small flexible groups per day, Monday through Thursday. So Friday I've reserved for quizzes, tests, review, and stations. We always know that sometimes there's those unit with more days, and I'm going to have to use Friday as an instruction day too, but Friday is mostly going to be available for that time to do that. I'm thinking win time is going to be when I'm going to be able to do most of that extra help intervention time, and we'll see more once school starts. That might be something I have to tweak. It just depends on what we see win time is going to look like for us when we meet as a team. Finally, homework is going to be assigned on a weekly basis. It'll be like a packet and include some review questions. So I'm planning on taking some questions, a few questions from each of our worksheet pages that we would typically do every night. A place for parents just to sign up that yes, they practice their multiplication facts during the week. And then there's going to be a real life activity or question for students to work with their parents on. So they can discuss and have their adult helper sign and return by Friday. And then I will also provide clear directions to the parents as to how that homework is supposed to go. I know that I also want to let the parents know exactly where they can find resources on Schoology so they know how to go there and use that tool to help their students also. So because I used my design thinking principles and I used those different ideas, then I can go back and look at my solution and say how I address those. So the weekly review was important for making connections. The power standards and critical thinking exploring is meaningful activities. The limited large group and using more small flexible groups helps in that differentiation project or part of the project, as does the station rotations. Extra help win time, that small group also that will be helping the students. And then that homework is when I was looking at the communication piece, being able to communicate with parents, trying to keep the homework down to, 10 minutes per grade level, so it should be doable every night for my students. Finally, I just wanted to take this chance to say thank you so much. My friends, my family, my co-workers, students in my neighborhood, thank you so much for helping me with this project. You all know it's been a long process for me. And I'm so happy that I have something that I think is workable for this coming year. And I look forward to coming to you and asking you for feedback, asking you for help, asking you for ideas. You will never know how important that is to me. So thank you so very much. And thank you for coming here to celebrate with me today. If you'd like any more information, there's my blog. Visit anytime. Thank you so much. See you later. Bye-bye.